Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Today, our guest is Manuel Franco, and we're going to talk about supercomputers. I don't think the word super is applicable. I can't super, super hyper computers is the beginning thought process of what we're talking about today. We're going to talk about exascale computing, which is again considered supercomputing, but it's much more than that. 1 quintillion speed, a billion processing per second. A billion processing power per second in 2020. Manuel Franco, you're a community leader. I know you and I have discussed the concern about this and looking at it, not so much the technical side, how does it work, but the fact that it's there and its impact on society, on all of us as well. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to going through this. Again, went through and caught that headline, went through the story, and I said, wow. I'm sure that 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, we were talking about supercomputers, and they were talking about the speed that those computers were going, which are tremendously slower than now, and the changes that have come through. Now we're looking at these units that are so unconceivable in my mind of how quick they are, that what are the changes that are going to come through? When that really comes down to hitting us, where are we going to be? And what mindset are we going to be in to be able to handle it? And it's something that we have to start facing now. So that's my concern, and that's why I wanted to bring it up.
Other than the technical side, which we're not going to get into today, but looking at the impact that it will have on the world, most of the articles I'm reading says we're not prepared. We're in new territory that is really like we have no idea what we're doing with a super mega power that it's chilling to the bone.
We've always been concerned about HAL, and I'm only going back to that movie that came out and was controlling everything. We're getting to that point. They're starting to build machines that have the capacity that are starting to get close to our brain capacity as far as we understand. What's going to change? How's that going to move? How much input will it actually accept? And where is it going to take that input? We don't know. And that's where the scary part is. We weren't ready before. We're much less ready now. And I would hope that this pandemic time period, which is giving a lot of people a tremendous amount of time to think, because we do have that extra time recently to think about things that we never considered, will spark something in somebody's head to start really focusing into it. The Pope has already started into that direction with some of the initiatives of working with the real high-end Microsoft and IBM. But, what are we doing? And what are we doing with specifically our children? Setting up their mindsets to be able to accept and expand and change as it goes through. They're going to have to be able to change much faster than we have.
I'd like to go back to something you said and sort of clarify, but it's sort of a paradox. The irony is there. When you said HAL, I thought you were saying hell, HELL. You were obviously talking about the computer in the movie 2001 Space Odyssey.
Correct.
Which is HALE.
Right.
But you know what? There may not be that much of a difference if you sort of take it on from there. Number two, just to add clarity, help me if I'm wrong. The Pope in Rome is a Jesuit, and he has a master's in science. So he has the background, if you will, in that area. He's also supposed to be a good dancer and soccer player, I understand as well. What you made me think of is this. We have a 4-ounce piece of machinery upstairs in our heads. And even though we're born with it, we live with it, and we die with it, how much really are we conscious of it? How much of it? 5%, 10%, and everything else, the sort of the machine works on its own.
Exactly. We're not even aware of what we have, and have not taken that to the fullest extent. We haven't developed it to where it should be. So the capacity is way beyond what we understand. But we are developing alternatives that have the ability, as it seems like, can eventually overcome us. And is it going to be too late when we finally realize? I don't know. Um, and then the focus that we're taking right now is so different, um, that we're barely starting to understand how to deal with each other. Right now, the biggest thing is the inclusivity and diversity of mankind, and how we work in corporations to be able to include everybody in there. And here we are in another aspect, literally looking at developing, I should say, things outside of that environment. How is it all going to come together? Will we finally understand each other and have something else that comes out and starts to challenge us in other directions? So those are the things that are going through my head, and I have no answers to any of these.
Well, the beginning of the wondering is part of the process. Martin Ford from MIT wrote a book, and fundamentally, the idea is that it's already, the hardware and software is already there to remove us, but we decide not to because we still don't know what to do with ourselves if we were removed from the workforce. And then how would we make money? What would we buy? Would we make the decisions or give it all over to computing? But the point, let me add to this. Let me make this extremely complicated issue more complicated, if because that's where we're going with all this. If this is 2020 and this is what we can do, and what we've started to do from 1970 to the present, given the acceleration of technology that has happened over the last 50 years, what's going to happen over the next 10?
Correct.
So you take this quadrillion per second machine and give it 1,000 times faster. To go back to your question, what's happening to us?
And that's, again, when you go through and you think about yourselves or about mankind, the fact that work is so critical to our being, to, make us feel, for our psychologies, for our psychic, I should say, to make sure that we're worthwhile. You start taking that away, where are we going to go? As is, the pandemic has taken a lot of people away of certain things that identify themselves. What is this machine going to do? Is it going to start taking a lot of the identity out of our personalities? And how is that going to change? And how are we going to be able to start to refocus our existence, which is part of what's going through my head too.
I'm going to take it to the next step because, as you know, I'm a futurist. I analyze the trends that are ongoing in the future. We're already there. As we're asking the question, we've already surpassed the situation. There was an article recently, 2025, half of the work in the world can be done with machines. Okay. So it's already there. I think the number is actually higher, but I think everything's being slowed down to let people sort of figure it out, but no one's figuring it out. We're too busy with our little details of, should I put the paper there, or did I send you the mail? And then we flood ourselves with emails about a lot of trivialities. We're going to have to recreate humanism.
And that's exactly, the area that I'm starting to think about, is the fact of we've got to recreate, and we've got to recreate ourselves at our stage, but we also have to be the mentors, if you want to call it, the examples, so that our kids start to already focus into that direction. When we you come from an educational background, from being in that educational system. I've dabbled in on the, I'll call it the outside, because I don't work with kids to help them. I've worked with the administration to try and support them and to move along. But it's something that concerns me. What are we teaching our kids? And not, I'm not just talking about the issues of how to get things done, but their mental capacity to accept change and focus to where they should be focusing, instead of to the problems that the world is creating through, you know, the marketing that we put out there, because, not what you actually need, but what you want. Our whole system is based on creating the need of having to buy more things and take care of satisfying ourselves, instead of us focusing into making sure that we understand what really is needed and focus onto the reality of the world. And at this point, we've gone through and literally in the process of destroying our environment, because we want to focus just on our own, not needs, but just our wants.
Okay, I'm going to pose a solution. You know, we're into huge unknown territory. I think we're in the on the threshold of being able to take atoms and reform them. So if I need gold and I've got lead, I think in the near future, within the next 10 years, we'll be able to convert the atoms, restructure the atoms into gold. So then everybody can have gold. No big issue. We can take dirt and create it into, take the atoms from the dirt and then use them for making a beautiful plant. Or, we can take, theoretically, the atoms and maybe in the near future create another human. That's a little bit further, but work with me here. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying it's good or bad. I'm not even touching the ethics of doing all this. But I think we're already seeing bits and pieces of it, as we're seeing the manipulation of the DNA.
Right. So where does that take us? You
Leaves
know,
us behind. I think it leaves us behind. My personal opinion is that we're falling further and further behind. We're becoming the dodo birds over the next 20, 30 years.
so what do we do to try and get even in par to where we should be? Not even to get advanced, but just to come to the same level. Um,
I think we need a problem. I think we need a problem on this planet that can absorb all this brain power, ours, including all this artificial one, and put it to work on a problem that is really endless, other than figuring out pi. And I think, my opinion, I think that the answer is we look into the universe. We
okay.
study the stars. We study the furthest reaches of stars. How can we get there? Maybe it's impossible. I don't know. Give us the ultimate problems that exist in the universe, and let's work on that level. Because if we work on little petty problems like, gee, how do I solve this little jigsaw? That's not going to go very far.
Well, that's where we've been at most of this time period,
Mm.
right? So, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because now, as in certain news areas, you start to see the fact that they're opening up the concept or the thoughts that we've been visited from outside. And they're starting to open up the fact that, yes, that there actually have been findings of things that are not understandable in our capacity, but did exist. So is that starting to open up now?
Well, I think it opens up the whole idea that we're not the only ones in the quadrillion universe. that,
Exactly.
that there's a potential that there are other living forms on this cosmos, as we put it. But I think if we direct our attention to scientific investigation of the universe, bring the understanding, reach out to organisms that may be, floating in the air of Venus, as they're claiming within the last few months, as a potential possibility, etc. And exploring the universe, I don't think there's really much more we can do.
And then just keep on going in the same direction we've been going and try and get, but again, I guess one of the things that comes to mind is mindset. The mindsets that we have existed in the way that we were brought up, and the mindsets that have to change to go into the future.
Yes.
Whether it's closed or opened, and most of it has been closed because we've been taught to follow a certain pattern and not deviate, because that's going to give you success. And right now, success is starting to change so much that we have to start to open our mindsets to be able to start trying other things and testing other things and being able to be acceptable of the change that are coming through so that we can change and move forward. So how do we do that?
You asked for something very specific, and I do offer one. Again, the benefit of being a futurist is that I talk to people around the world about different ideas. There's one idea that's been floating around for a long time. I've interviewed people, I've done shows on it, and that's universal income. Universal income is being discussed in the presidential, and I hear about projects being done here and there. Oakland, California, I saw it trying to be implemented in Switzerland. So I've seen it in different places. I think that's the basic idea, that people will get income on a monthly basis by basically you just go to the bank and there's a X amount of dollars in your bank account for every person on the planet. And people ask me, well, where's this money coming from? I said, oh, we're taxing the machines. Because if they're working, they're doing work and they're not paying revenue, then that's a whole different issue in economics. But if we don't put people on the payroll for going out and checking on the trees, and we don't give people money in a money economy, we're going to have a very dangerous situation, which people will turn on each other. It's happening now.
It's happening now, exactly. But we go back to the same thing that I was kind of mentioning is, okay, need and want. And what mindset are we in? Because once you come into a point that it's just strictly everybody's going to have X amount of money coming in, is there going to be a solution, or is it just going to create another set of problems?
Everything creates another set of problems. But as business people say, and you're a business person, sometimes problems create opportunity. And it invites people to be more creative given the new problem, which nobody has solutions to, or at least not up to now. Yeah. That's not necessarily a negative thing.
True. But again, I'm just kind of questioning a lot of things. I mean, don't get me wrong. Not that I'm completely against that.
I'm going to get you wrong no matter what. You and I always get each other wrong. Come on. No, we don't understand each other 100%, but we get the parameters of what we're saying.
No, the idea of having, universal income is excellent, but the fact that it's going to solve certain areas of people that can't, whatever they try to do not have the ability of having that income. But also we start to change in the fact that the fact that we have to work, the manual labor that's needed, that's been brought into our existence to be able to feel better. It's almost like there's a lot of people that work, not because they have to work, it's because if they don't work, they're not going to feel good. And it doesn't matter how much money they make. There's people that just work, they make a lot of money or they make a little money, but just the fact that they're working makes them feel better. So within us, the fact that we're doing something. So is it going to change what we need to do, how we need to focus onto that? And again, changing that mindset as to what we need.
There was no work per se at a certain time in humanity in our civilization. When we became civilized, we started to split some people for workers and non-workers. We get into a lot of history here. But work was not in our DNA. We created it. It's a human invention. And, well, to do things to survive, to get food, to build a, housing over us and all
That's
that.
what I'm talking about.
Okay, but you weren't doing it for someone else. You were doing it out of you. You don't do it. You're going to get eaten up alive by the bear down the street. But
Exactly.
but today's society is
Yeah.
a lot of work is really just shifting papers from one table to another. And
But you,
what I'm saying is, if you can give that over to a machine, which is what's happening, you better reinvent the word to mean something else, or invent a new word that's not no longer work as we all understand it.
yeah, but you hit to the point that I'm kind of thinking about. Okay, exactly. Definition or the understanding of work. Uh, we used to work to be able to feed ourselves, to house ourselves, to protect ourselves. And that brought satisfaction because that gave us a reason to exist. A lot of that's already coming together and it's become a lot easier. But we're still talking about accomplishing things to make sure that we move forward, which is basically, the feeding ourselves, housing ourselves, clothing ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. And it's not about just shuffling papers from one side to the other. When we're working to shuffle papers from one side to the other is because we're going to bring something to accomplish those needs of food, shelter, and clothing. So that's kind of the mindset that I'm talking about.
You sound to me like someone who is trying to convince me that work is important.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to say is, I'm not sure it ever has been important. I
Hmm.
think it gave us something to do. It's like a game. Gave us something to do, kept us busy, kept us out of trouble, as we say to kids, go play soccer, keep you out of trouble. But then they send you on the street. That's not going to help. But anyway, okay. But if we reach a point where that no longer functions, which is what I think we're doing, especially with these machines are taking over, and there's, I don't know, let's say 25% of the population in the world no longer has work, we better find something else that's not called work. We better find some activity, creative involvement, sitting down and, I don't know, putting a VC on their heads and they play games all day long and you pay them for that. I don't know. But I think the idea of work, at least maybe I'm using it too narrowly. I think we better get away from that.
And I think, yeah, I think it's the definition or understanding of the word work versus the fact of activities that we have to do to fulfill the needs that we have mentally that we're accomplished in what we're doing.
What is that? You just said, okay, mental things that we have to do, such as,
Um, you know, even as we go through a daily routine of, making sure that someone else is okay versus yourself, making sure that your kids are okay, that your wife is doing well, that you're doing things to make sure that her life is easier. Those are things that you're doing to help others, and then in turn make you feel better. Okay, the
okay,
the the term service above self comes to mind, which is things that service clubs go out and do to help humanity. But in reality, a lot of that actually comes back to support the psyche of oneself to make sure that they're fulfilling the needs that need to be fulfilled to move forward in the world. And these are the things that I'm talking about. Um, it's work. It's manual labor doing different things, moving around, bringing back, and that's fulfilling. Different than working just shuffling paper back and forth. So yes, equipment and machines can do that, but the focus of what we're doing and why we're doing it for the betterment of others, that's I guess what I'm kind of thinking about or focusing on. And that the fulfillment of how we're going to feel once that's all completed.
I think that's a wonderful discussion. I'm glad we're having it. I think it's critical to keep doing it. But let's bring it more to the practical side. We have this quintillion machine. Actually, there's not one, there's many of them. Each one's doing different issues, okay? A little piece of one of them, it turned itself into Amazon. And Amazon is doing a massive force to impact brick and mortar stores. We're seeing it in front of our eyes in a matter of a couple of years. Okay, are we going to go back to brick and mortar? I doubt it. What happened to all those people that got unemployed in addition to plus the pandemic, plus now we're doing through Zoom rather than going to office, and then maybe become permanent for a lot of people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, we don't have time to sit here and say, gee, what makes us feel good? We better come up with a solution now, because from my area, wherever I travel, especially when I go downtown, there's a heck of a lot of people who are on the streets, and the number is getting worse.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of the things that again comes back to mind is the fact that a lot of people that may be on the streets may be happy. Okay. And I just go back to the fact of there's a lot of activities that as children that we did that kept us happy, for lack of a better term, satisfied, fulfilled, that didn't include a lot of technological toys, but simple toys. And that's kind of what I'm kind of going up and trying to focus on is how do we feel? What do we do to make sure that we're fulfilled, that we're doing what we need, or that what our psyche, I think, and I'm using psyche, just our personal self needs to be able to feel comfortable or in order without actually focusing on the comforts of everything around us, the material side of it. And that's kind of where I'm thinking or considering.
Manuel, you've always been my mentor, my friend, my critic, and someone to bounce ideas off of. I think you just gave me you just reminded me of something. Okay. What do we all go back to? You said psyche, that's what threw it in there. I thought maybe we go back to a world where all we do all day long, every day is play. Different kinds of play. Some complicated play, some simple play, some you play by yourself, i.e. technology. Some you play with other people, you play Go or you play chess with 3-4 people in the world. We go back to a world of play because that seems to be the more natural. Children grow up playing, being creative, artwork, writing poetry, etc. Why not get paid? Why not pay the people to play? And that's fulfilling. They want to compete. They want to do it for nothing. They want to do whatever for the prestige. I think in the future, thanks to you, if we're going to get away from work, which I think we need to do, especially trivial work, which a lot of it's going to fade away, I think we give people work, the activity of play.
You know, I understand. I think I understand what you're saying, and it's not so much play, but it's activities that relate to being able to fulfill the needs that we need to fulfill that psyche, that ability to feel complete.
Okay.
Okay. And those are the areas. And I keep on going back to the same thing. That normally doesn't completely mean that we have to have a financial rewards. The rewards can be different. The rewards can be just in making other people see what other people are doing, that they've improved their lives through the efforts that you've gone through and done. So it's that mindset of changing ourselves. That is it the financial rewards or is it the human rewards that you get as you move forward? So you're talking about resolving the financial rewards through a universal income, but how do we fulfill and complete the human rewards that we need to make sure that we don't feel that we're unneeded or unwanted, but that we are part of this whole world to move everything forward?
Okay, so you and I need to do some homework over the next few weeks, months. We need to find 3 or 4 psychologists, psychiatrists out there to help us be part of the show and talk about the humans of the future in a world where the work doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and I guess that's a lot of what we're talking about. That's a concern that I have, is that yes, we're starting to come up with all these equipments and technology that can overcome the challenges that we're not able to overcome in our abilities. But the other issues that are going to be coming up are going to be devastating if we don't address them now. And the one I'm talking about is the fulfillment of mankind to be able to make sure that they feel that they've accomplished something positive and not something negative. Because otherwise, we'll just destroy the whole human being.
Once again, I'm a futurist, but there are two futures: the immediate future and the long term, and then the middle one. And sometimes I'm at different levels. You make me remember that our most immediate one, for me, the great concern is the number of people that are unemployed with no resources, i.e., money or access to items that they need for their basic survival. Not only in the United States, but worldwide, as you know, people are becoming being refugees and being pushed around in different parts of the world. If we don't solve that issue real rapidly within the next 5 years, we have a lot of people who will support radicalism to shift society off its base immediately because they have nothing to lose. I think the immediate, because, and the pandemic added a formula to it, made it worse, and the computings, this is adding it to it. I think all of it is just making everything horrible. I think we better respond to the immediate future in light of the long-term future.
Yep, exactly. And that's the area that I'm kind of trying to focus on and see what are the steps we need to do to start to address that immediate future and change the mindsets of those coming up. You know, we have grandkids, and what are we leaving to them? There's not much that we can do in the technology side because that's out of our hands. But we have to be able to do something in the mindsets to be able to give them the tools to be able to deal and handle all this and evolve with it.
We're going to have to go to part two, Manuel.
Okay, you got it. Excellent.
We're going to go to part two on this. We're going to have to come together and take it from here. The idea is, what should we teach grandchildren, our youth, to be able to live with this new reality of the 21st century and all this AI that's surrounding us and overwhelming us and really just burying us and leaving us behind. I don't think we can stop the wave, if you will, no. But how do we as humans change for the betterment of our own survival? Because the machines are working on their own survival at their own speed, and we can't catch up to them. So, your closing statements, Manuel.
Well, I think that we've come across and actually brought more questions than we started with, but at least the focus is that we start to need to pay attention to the immediate future with what I'm looking at as addressing the mindset of where we are, but primarily so that we can influence the mindsets of our younger generation to be able to be better prepared to cope with the future. And that's what I'm working on.
Okay. I look forward to meeting with you again. I do have a list. I will research it and bring it up again that I've come across with that discussion. As humans, we've got two problems. AI brought the problem to our desk, to our laps. Number one is, how do we have to change to adapt to each other differently, given we're in a different society where we're global, and now we're electronically global as well. And number two, how do we change ourselves to be able to ride out the ongoing changes that have bombarded us? To close with this idea, how many people our age, we're almost close to 70-ish, how many people our age really know proficiently how to use our phones?
Yep.
You know, and we're how fast we went from rotary phones to the present.
Yeah.
So we have to think in between. That's today. What's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yep. Very much so.
Heaven help us.
Amen.
Amen. Manuel, thank you for being on our program. We'll come back and carry it on from here and talk about specifically how to prepare our future generations to adapt and succeed in the near future, given the overwhelming impact of AI in our world.
Thank you.
Manuel.